to his selfishness, low shooting percentages from the field and three, saying he wasn't good on defense, and the fact that he's missed the most field goals in NBA history.
Yo, are they really saying Kobe Bryant is overrated? Hold up, bro. Most overrated superstars in NBA history, man. This is gonna draw a lot of controversy, right? I can already see it, man. It's gonna be, it's gonna be so. Everybody gonna have something to say about this one. I'm ready to hop straight into it. Let's see what's on this list, man. I know it's gonna be real hot and spicy.
The 10 most overrated superstars in NBA history. A video that without a doubt is gonna be controversial and draw a lot of hate. But I'm willing to do it because let me be clear, these aren't my actual opinions. I'm just gonna be taking the subject of most overrated superstars and gathering the biggest arguments against these players for you guys to then be the judges of on whether they're right or wrong. So don't come at me.
Okay, so it's not his actual opinion, man. He's basically saying he's just getting the best.
So let's get into it. But first, let's start off with some honorable mentions, like Kobe Bryant and Steve Nash. And there's a lot of people out there who believe these to be true, and here's why. The case behind Steve Nash being overrated is because of his lacking defense, him not deserving at least one of his MVPs, and he didn't actually make the Suns that much better. Of course, he was most known for bringing the Suns from a 29-53 record without him to 62-20 once he got there, which
that's what I'm saying. Come on, now.
But some fans have said that that was only because they had just traded their star and main point guard in Stephon Marbury, leaving them without one. In the middle of the season, they went 29-53. So when they were able to sign Nash, he filled in that role, giving them an actual point guard, so obviously they were going to play much better. And as for Kobe, of course people point to his selfishness, low shooting percentages from the field and three, saying he wasn't good on defense, and the fact that he's missed the most field goals in NBA history.
Yo, are they really saying Kobe Bryant is overrated? Hold up, bro.
And now let's get on to the real list. Carmelo Anthony has convinced a lot of people over recent years that he's not actually a superstar. But for the people that still believe he is, the argument against it is that we're talking about the dude that only made it out of the second round twice in his career. His only
that is tough. I ain't gonna lie.
One scoring title. So should he have really been included in the NBA's top 75 players of all time list? He's always been a one-dimensional player who was a ball hog and literally only scored the ball and averaged 2 assists a game for his career. To the point where no one wanted him on their team, even for the veteran minimum, because of his play style, makes you question how good he really was. The way he played never worked on any team he was on, no matter how good the roster was. And he flat out missed the playoffs his last 4 seasons on the Knicks. And this is a lot of his weaknesses, which is what's led most people to agree that it's hard to find a player on the top 75 players list with as complicated and infamous of a legacy as Melo has. Now looking back, Yao Ming was a really loved player. But was
Yao
he
Ming?
Hold up. Says he was and remembers him as? I mean, he only played 7 seasons in the NBA, and he played under 55 games in 3 of those because of injuries. And I'm not even counting his last 2 as actual seasons because he missed an entire year in one of them, then played 5 games in the other. So he basically retired at 28 years old. Of course,
that's
he made
a young age to retire, I ain't gonna lie.
And was promoted by the league a ton because of his popularity in China. But if it was anyone else that had the amount of injuries and as short of a career as he had, while being drafted first overall, would they be considered a bust? And even on the court, his 9.2 rebounds and 1.9 blocks a game for his career weren't the best considering his size and a role on the team. Plus, he only averaged 20 points a game 3 times in his career. And
I mean, back in the day, averaging 20 points.
Now listen, those are all great numbers for a player.
He was top of the top.
Currently in the Hall of Fame. And all of that put together, while not forgetting the fact that his Rockets teams only made it past the first round once in his career. And of course, during that postseason, he got injured and missed for the second round. Listen, I think the main part of this argument is that Yao was great, but maybe just not as great as everyone remembers. For Russell Westbrook, I'm really
hey, hold on. Now you ain't gonna do Russell Westbrook like
on the
that.
Westbrook's overrated bandwagon by now. Today, Blake Griffin is weirdly just still known as a role player, and it looks like that's where the rest of his career will be. So he's not overrated now, but looking back at his past, I think he was overrated back when he was thought of as a star. So let's first take a look at it like this. Blake played with Chris Paul for most of his time as a star. The man who got DeAndre Jordan to be an all-star and in the All-NBA first team. So there's no doubt he elevated Blake's game too. But surprisingly, throughout all of his Clippers days, Blake never really averaged better stats than he did in his rookie year when he played without CP. He was also not a great rebounder and not known for his defense. Once teams got past being scared of his dunks, there wasn't much to his game. But over the years, he started to expand it and stretching out more, which was a good thing. It's also worth mentioning though that Blake was an all-star in 2 seasons without Chris. As a rookie in the first, but then the Clippers missed the playoffs, and in his 1 full year in Detroit. But in that year, they only improved 2 games from what they were at before they traded for him and just barely made the 8th seed. Listen, all I'm saying is that Blake Griffin in his prime was an athletic monster, but he was getting treated like the face of the NBA at one point, when he really wasn't anything near it. Some people say that John Stockton was overrated throughout his career because he was lucky enough to have the longevity he did while also playing with the perfect teammate for him in Karl Malone, and at the same time having the perfect head coach in Jerry Sloan that played
he is one of the best point guards of all time.
All of this together is why he's the all-time assist leader by
you feel me?
assists, and it's the only reason he's considered a top 75 75 player of all time and a Hall of Famer. And there's a big following behind this one, but I disagree. John Stockton was an elite point guard no matter how you spin it. You can't punish John for both himself and Karl Malone being drafted in the position of being perfect teammates. He was given an opportunity in the league and he made the best of it. You can't use the argument that players are only good because of who they have as teammates. I mean, that's obviously the goal for any team, is to find teammates that match up well. On top of that, John was a great defender, making the all-defensive second team 5 times and the steals twice. And it's a terrible take to use his longevity against him, because all the credit goes to him there for playing with a low-impact style and taking care of his body. Kyrie Irving is a player that at this point, a lot of fans are starting to call him overrated. From an all-time perspective especially, because he has the skill to be a Hall of Famer, but he's ruined that these last few years, and it's sad how out of nowhere his off-court issues have really come out to ruin what was going to be an excellent Hall of Fame career. Anthony Davis in his first couple of years as a superstar was extremely overrated looking back, and I think some people may still have him in that boat. Early on, he was in the conversations of being the overall most skilled player we've ever seen across the board in terms of steals, blocks, rebounds, defense, offense, scoring, and the total package. He was thought of as being the guy that surpassed Tim Duncan as the best power forward of all time.
That man made a glass.
More talented than Tim in most categories, but then he got to the Lakers. It was easy for him to be a star on the Pelicans when they weren't making the playoffs and nothing was at stake for when he would get injured every single season. But now that he's on the Lakers and his glass bones and paper skin have shown themselves in every year that he's been there so far, makes you wonder what his true value is. I mean, he was in top 5 players in the NBA discussions almost his entire career before LA. And now I just made a video ranking him 28 currently in the league because his actual skill doesn't matter for him for the Lakers or for LeBron.
Yeah, the Lakers one is kind of
I agree that Jeremy Lin was pretty overrated for a few years.
His prime was more on the Pelicans.
Don't get me wrong, Linsanity was one of the best things we've ever seen in basketball, and Jeremy Lin was no joke. But if you remember, it was only about 40 games, and then we never saw that dude again. And I still do blame Carmelo Anthony for forcing the team to not re-sign him because he was taking some of the spotlight. And if he would have stayed in New York, then Linsanity may have continued even longer, but that never happened, and teams that signed him kind of hoped that it would come back for a little too long, and he made a career out of it. And when it became clear who the real Jeremy Lin was, he found himself out of the league in his physical prime. I can honestly say though, and agree with the fact that Oscar Robertson is pretty overrated. Most lists almost anywhere will have Oscar as the second greatest point guard of all time and the top 11 or 12 player in history. And anything that any of those lists ever mention is that he averaged triple-doubles. Well, so did Russell Westbrook, and look where he's at. He proved that it's possible to do that and still not be an all-time greatest point guard of all time. Aside from the title he won with Kareem, most of Oscar's seasons in the league weren't all that great. So with all due respect to him, I think we may all collectively need to stop overrating him just because of his triple-doubles. Now, there's some people that say Allen Iverson's overrated. Hold up. I'm not saying I do, but I'm speaking for those people and their reasoning. AI was a great scorer, and we can all agree on that. But he was also one of the most inefficient perimeter players we've ever seen, with career averages just barely ahead of Russell Westbrook. He was a player who shot 31%
from 3. That is kind of tough.
And for an MVP point guard, he never averaged over 7 assists a game. His inability to get his teammates involved and his inefficient shot selection were the 2 biggest things that held him back in his career. And sure, he made the finals and won MVP, but honestly didn't do anything after that. He would miss the playoffs completely in 3 out of his 5 next seasons in Philly before he would start changing teams, and by that point he himself really got his career off track and was never the same player. And now he's in the Hall of Fame and a top 75 player for 10 seasons in Philly, where only 5 of them were all that great. Kemba Walker, on the other hand, makes a much more convincing case of being overrated.
Kemba Walker's not even rated.
He falls apart on the Knicks this year, and the team chose to sit him out for the rest of the season instead of
playing him at all. Overrated if he's not even rated.
And wonder about him. And you go back to those Hornets days and see that he was a 3-time All-Star, but also that he never really ever had any quality teammates to play with. So whenever he would average 20 plus points a game, it was the Anthony Davis on the Pelicans effect. He was seen as the star and somebody had to score, and it ended up being him, while the team as a whole was always terrible and actually never made the playoffs or anything close to it. And while he had a couple of decent years on the Celtics, ultimately it ended up with him being traded because he just wasn't a good fit on the team. And now that the same things happened on the Knicks, if you go back in his career and look for bright spots, you only find a couple of seasons where he made the All-Star team for the Hornets, averaged only 5 assists a game on poor shooting numbers, and his team finished with a combined 111 and 135 record over that 3-year stretch on the Hornets. Pistol Pete is also referred to as an overrated player due to him being a very great scorer on paper, but overall was never able to lead any of his teams to any real success. But I've looked into this recently, and I can say it's not his fault that he barely ever made the playoffs. He was traded to the New Orleans Jazz, which was an expansion team, and they were just never able to get him a good roster. Once again, these weren't all my arguments, so don't come at me, but I do want to know if you guys agree with any of these, and which ones you think are completely wrong.
Yeah, man, that's tough, man. Hey, man, let me know down in the comments which ones you agree with, which ones should be added on here, which ones should be taken off. Let me know what you disagree with or agree with on this list, man. But I hope that boy enjoyed this video if you watch this right now. Appreciate you. See you in the next video, bro. Out.